Alright, in this lesson we're going to take a look at how to create a particle effect, kind of like what you would see hovering over perhaps a jump pad or a teleporter, just sort of an interesting looking science fiction effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So let's go over here and go into our actor class browser and make sure we have the emitter selected and just add an emitter in, just like we did in the last lesson. Now, this is not going to be a very difficult effect to create. So let's select this guy, move him to right about there, and make sure he's lying on the ground. So, yep, something like that.
Okay.
Now, let's make sure our real-time preview is turned on so we can see what's going on. Then we can come into the properties here, go into the emitter tab, add one, just like we did last time, and we do want to create a sprite emitter in this case. So, create a new sprite emitter, and come down to texture. Now, of course, we have this weird-looking, horrible-looking texture. So, if we come into our texture browser, let's choose something that looks halfway decent. Now, again, we're doing a portal type effect, so any of these flares that we have here will work fine. I kind of like the look of that one right here. So we can select that one, come over to texture, and just say use.
Okay, cool.
So look at that. Now we have something created.
Fancy.
And of course, we're going to come down to size. You know, that doesn't look too good. That looks bad.
Yeah,
yes.
I'd have to agree.
Yeah, definitely. So let's take the size, and again, we only need to change X because we have uniform size turned on. So maybe something like that. Of course, it's going to be hard to see at this point because the icon is still being displayed and it's behind it. So let's go ahead and add some velocity to them. So come down to the velocity tab, come down to start velocity range, and because this is Z up world, come down to Z and add a little bit of velocity to them. So something like that. Again, this is something that you can just tweak on your own.
Oh, look at that.
So something slow, kind of fading up.
Now, it looks like we're going to need to spread that effect out a little bit, because like a single trail of particles just isn't that convincing.
No, it looks really bad. So if we move this over a little bit, and then come up to our location tab. Now, remember in the last lesson when we did this right here, this waterfall type effect, we used the, come down here, we used the PTLS sphere. In this case, we want to shoot out from a rectangular area. So in this case, the box is going to work perfectly. So if we come down to Start Location Range, we can define a square area, or a box. So in this case, we just want it to be a 2D plane, so we'll just leave Z set to 0, 0, 0.
Okay.
0, 0, excuse me.
No,
so,
I got you.
Yeah. So inside of here, what we can do is set, let's say we wanted a 40 by 40 square. The max is going to be 20, min is going to be negative 20. For Y, same thing, 20 and negative 20. That makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
So with that, check it out. Now we're emitting from a 40 by 40 square.
Oh, very nice.
So isn't that looking interesting?
Starting to look pretty cool.
So now, another thing, look at that. They're just kind of shooting up and then, well, popping away. How can we change this, Zach?
Probably give them a little bit of a fade in and a fade out.
Yeah, that would look a whole lot better. So we can come into fading, excuse me, turn on fade in, and set the fade in end time to about 0.2. So if you look down here, it's nice and fading in. And then when it gets up to here, we want it to fade out. Now, again, we need to come down to our time tab, at the very bottom here, check our lifetime range to see when we're dying. And you know what? Right now, it's always living 4 seconds. That's doesn't have a whole range or anything, so it doesn't look very realistic. So we can come in here and maybe change this to leave this at 4 and set this to maybe 2.5. So now it has a random range where it dies. So now it's a little bit different.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit higher. Try not to get too picky, but you know. So something like that. Then when it gets up to this area right here, it just directly dies. So we can come back up to the fading tab, and yep, you guessed it, turn on fade out. And fade out start time, again, look down at the time here, and around 3.5, so starting fade time about 3 seems logical. So with that on, now it fades out, looks a whole lot better. Another thing is maybe we want the size to be a little bit larger difference here. So maybe set this up to 20. So now we have a lot more variation.
A lot more variation in our size.
Yeah, it looks a whole lot better. Now, another thing that we didn't really touch on in the last lesson is, well, we touched on it a little bit, but in this case I'm going to do something a little bit different. Under the color tab, we have color scale. So what if I wanted to say, maybe start out with the color yellow and fade to the color red?
Okay.
Or fade to the color blue, let's say. What we can do is use the color scale here, and you'll notice that color scale is in a lot of scales are in a lot of different places. And what this allows us to do is start out at, say, the beginning of a particle's life as a certain value, and at the end of the particle's life end at a different value. And you can create a whole gradient, if you will, with these scales. So,
very cool.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. So if we come in here and we can add, so we've just added the first slot of our gradient. So inside of here we can say relative time. This is the start of the particle's life. What do we want the color to be? Well, let's just pick a color. Come in here, click the browse here, and come up to, let's say we want it to start out as yellow.
Oh, nice. You don't need to enter numeric values.
No,
you can actually
don't.
choose a color.
Yes, very, very nice. So, of course, it will show it in here if you wanted it to.
Sure.
Which is nice. So let's add another gradient, and the relative time is going to be 1. So by the end of the particle's life, we want the color to be this color here. So
relative time goes from 0 to 1.
Right.
0 being the birth of the particle and 1 being the death.
Exactly.
Cool.
So let's say we want the end to be blue. Now, you'll not see any difference here. What's wrong? Well, you need to turn on use color scale. Otherwise, well, nothing happens. So if we switch this on,
You're just doing that by double-clicking, by the way.
Yes, I am double-clicking. So now look at it. It starts out at that yellow color that we chose, fades to blue, and then dies off.
Very cool.
So if we wanted to, we could even come in here, and just to stress a little bit more, come in here and say add. Now, maybe we want it to reach blue at half of the particle's life. So we can say relative time 0.5. And then the last entry that we have here, set this to 1. And let's set this to what color, Zach?
Try red.
Alright, so let's pick a solid red color. And now if we come in here, check it out. Starts out at green, fades to blue, and it's going to die off at red. However, it's fading out at the moment, so let's just turn this off so it's a little bit easier to see. Starts out at blue, ends with red, as you can see. So at the very end of its life, it's red.
That's awesome.
Yes, very, very cool looking.
So what you got is looking pretty cool. Go ahead and switch your fade out back on.
Alright, so we can, alright. Something like that.
Yeah, but your effect is a little bit faint right now. I'm thinking maybe it could use some more particles.
Hey, that's a good idea. So let's come into the General tab here, and maybe set this to 50. So look at that.
Oh, yeah. So that looks a lot better.
Yeah, a lot more interesting. So, I guess with that pretty much, we didn't really introduce a whole lot of new attributes, if you will, in this lesson.
Right, but I mean, we used a sprite emitter with the last effect, and we used a sprite emitter with this effect as well. Right,
but we did introduce the color scale, which is a very powerful feature. And again, if we look in all of these other ones, let's pick one. Size. We can change, there's a size scale as well, which will allow us to do the same thing. Over the particle's lifetime, start at, say, 0, and end at, say, 1.
Don't just tell me, show me.
Okay. So let's come in here and say size scale. Alright, add. Let's say we want him to start out at relative time 0, set his size to 1.
Okay.
And
so that would be at his birth, he has a size of 1.
Right.
Cool.
So it's the default size. Let's add another one, so at the end of his life, maybe we want the size to be 5. So something really, really big. And again, we need to come down here and say use size scale, set this to true. So now check it out. They start out really, really regular, and actually one thing that I did not set up here is right here, use regular size scale. We need to set this to false so that it starts using our new set here.
Oh wow, check that out.
So it starts out at regular size, and then over its life gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, reverse that baby. I want to see what happens if they go from big to being small.
Okay, so set this to 5, and then set the relative size back to 1.
Okay, maybe 5 is a little bit big. Maybe bring it down to like 3.
Okay.
Or 2 or something. Oh, yeah, baby.
Hey, see? That is a cool looking effect.
Now it looks pretty cool, because it's got sort of like that flare at the bottom, and it kind of trickles and fades out as you go down.
Yeah, kind of cool.
Yeah, very nice effect.
So, I guess with that, that's going to wrap up this lesson. And in the next lesson, we can show you guys how to create that torch that we have up there.
Cool.
So, that's going to wrap up this lesson. Thanks, everyone.